Good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Noah from the Marion Library Service, and welcome to our Library Through the Lens live webinar, part of our series of adult programs delivered differently. This evening, thanks to Alan and Unwin, we welcome best-selling voice of the outback, Fleur McDonald, as she discusses her heartwarming new novel of rural suspense with fellow author Maya Linnell. Please feel free at any time during the presentation to type questions you have for Fleur into the Q&A or chat feeds on your screen, and I'll ask these at the end of their conversation. Fleur McDonald grew up among the farming communities of Orroroo in South Australia, spent time gillarooing, and now lives east of Esperance, Western Australia, on 8,000 acres, writing about strong women overcoming adversity, drawing inspiration from her own experiences in rural Australia. She is the best-selling author of Red Dust, Blue Skies, Purple Roads, Fool's Gold, Where the Rivers Run, and Without a Doubt, just to name a few. Fleur is tonight joined by fellow Australian rural romance writer, Maya Linnell, who is the best-selling author of Wildflower Ridge and Bottlebrush Creek. Now please sit back, grab a cuppa or a glass of wine, and please welcome Fleur and Maya.
Lovely. Thank you very much for having us, Tracy. I'm really thrilled to be here tonight, and a big warm welcome for Fleur McDonald. It's great to be here interviewing you, Fleur. How are you doing in Western Australia?
Oh, it's cold here today, Maya. We've had about 60 mils in the last 5 days, and it's blowing a gale. It's very different to where you are, I understand.
Yes, we're having a heat wave here in regional Victoria, which is, it's been unexpected. It feels like we often skip a lot of summer. So we often look over at WA and think, wouldn't that be nice? But it's very funny tonight to have those roles reversed.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And thank you very much to everyone who is here tonight joining us. We're thrilled to have your company. We love books, we love talking about books and writing, and you're in for a real treat because Fleur has got some great stories to tell us, and I can't wait to drill her all about the Shearer's wife. So this is the fantastic book that we're here to talk about tonight. And Fleur, instead of me trying to hash together a great description of your fantastic book, would you like to tell us in a nutshell a little bit more about the story?
I tend to read the blurb off the back. But no, I'll do my best. So The Shearer's Wife is clearly about a shearer's wife. I can't remember what the title was, but it was much more evocative, probably more like a Dave Burrows series title. So we had to pull that back into more a rural lit title. But so back in the 80s, which really doesn't seem that very long ago to me. My sister was born in 81, and I thought that it was just, like 20 odd years ago, but turns out it's 40. So, and I do have the grey hairs to prove that. So in 1980, Rose and Ian Kelly turn up in a little town called Barker in South Australia, and Rose is heavily pregnant with twins. Ian is a cocky shearer, a bit of a gypsy, a transient type worker, and just loves just going from shed to shed. So he's on the road, and that's changing a little bit with Rose being pregnant. And then fast forward to 2020, and the Australian Federal Police sweep in on Barker and make a arrest of a person that Dave Burrows and Jack Higgins just cannot work out why that's happened, and they feel that there's much more to the story. And obviously these two parallel storylines are interlocked, but you'll have to read the book to find out how.
Yeah, and I loved, Fleur, the way that you did interweave those two chapters, those two storylines. And I found myself getting really excited when you'd, write in the crux of one storyline, and then I'd be, oh, darn it, we've got to go back to the other one. But then, of course, by the time we hear a bit more of that storyline, I'm feeling really ripped off and we have to jump back to the other one, which is, I think you do that really well. Is that quite an art form to try and marry those two stories together? Fleur, can you tell us a bit about how you actually do that structurally?
just do that. I suppose a few of my books have got dual narratives in that. Crimson Dawn is one of them, and Where the River Runs certainly had a backstory, like a historical side to it. There's so many amazing stories back. Well, there are now, but the ones that I really love to harness are going back into the 70s, 80s, 60s even, because time back then was so different to now, and especially with COVID and everything, I just sometimes feel we need to just go back to our roots and be grounded, and that's country, that's when life was simple, and I love bringing those narratives into the story, and I suppose we just got to weave them in. I think when I'm writing, I always feel as I get to a certain spot, I need to change. And then I'll get to a certain spot and I'll go, oh, we haven't heard from Dave and Kim for a little while. We'll have to bring them in. So we'll, I'll do the 2020 storyline and then, shoot back to the 80s. It's just a feeling, and not very often am I wrong with that. I think as you read, as a reader, when it's like, no, I need to hear something more about the other characters back then. So I think it's just an instinctive type thing.
That's fantastic, because I've heard a few different authors talk about their actual technique and whether they write all of the modern subplot, first, and then they go back and they look for the themes and they interweave the older historical thing. And I find it fascinating to see how different people do it. So the fact that you can kind of cut and paste and do it as you're going, that's fantastic.
Well, I do write exactly like I write it as it is. I don't ever go back and forth between timelines. I have to say that I very much wing it when I write. I don't have very much structure to anything. I just write, and I can mostly work out where things need to be. Occasionally I'll come across, if I'm writing a book, I'll have a chat quite fit, so I go back up above that chapter, and then I'll keep writing until suddenly it all clicks into place like a jigsaw puzzle, and then I can go on past that chapter, but I never go forward or back in time or outside of what the storyline's going to be. I wing it, and I'm so disorganized in every other aspect of my life. I reckon if I tried to do something really weird when I'm writing, I'll probably lose it.
Look, I think you do a fantastic job, and I'll confess here, I've been a long-time fan for many, many books, and so it's such a thrill to have joined the Allen & Unwin stables and be writing, rural fiction with someone who I have looked up to for a very long time.
Very safe hands with Allen & Unwin.
Look, I think one of the things that you just do so beautifully, Fleur, is you have that community spirit running through your stories. And I really noticed it in the 1980s plot line, where you've got the small town gathering around to help the pregnant Rose, who's, got these babies on the way. She doesn't have much support from her husband, who's just thinking about the next shed. And, he's trying to save face with his shearing mates and trying to be the man about the house. And, she's struggling with that whole itinerant lifestyle. But the community gets behind her, and it's really beautiful the way that comes together. And then, that marries up so beautifully in the new, in the modern storyline, where you've got Kim, Detective Dave's wife, making this fantastic grand gesture and being so welcoming and always keeping an eye on the residents, as does Dave. Do you think that that's easy to find because you have lived in rural areas for such a long time?
Yeah, I think so. Every country town has those people in it. Every country town has people that aren't community minded as well. But I suppose I grew up in a town that was. My family was always very community orientated, and here where I live in Esperance now, I like to be involved in the community and making sure that you can help as much as I always believe that if you've got something to offer, you should try and help others. So I guess that's what I try and do, which is part of the reason that I like to bring that across into my characters. Kim in particular, who is actually based on a friend of mine. She's she's a very big bosomed woman with this amazing curly hair and this beautiful vivacious personality and smile. Her name's Heather, and she's also a funeral director, which doesn't match with her personality at all. But Kim is very much like her, and Heather is very much that person as well, being involved in the community and making sure that we're giving back.
That's fantastic. And I really liked as well, going to the community show, you've got the shearing competitions and things like that. That's the type of stuff that happens in our community too. And I think probably that's so wonderful for your readers, is they see this spotlight shine back on, what they love about rural living, and even the people that are in the city can see and really appreciate that whole vibe as well.
I'd have to admit that I actually have a very close insight into shows. I'm the secretary for our Agricultural Society here in Esperance, and we run the 2-day show in Esperance. And I've been involved with agricultural shows for most of my life. From when we were kids. I bet you do the same, Maya, like with your cooking. Like you would put entries into the show. I used to not steal. My great aunt used to let me take the flowers, but from Annie Grace's garden and pop them into the show. And then when I was still married, we used to show a lot of our white Suffolk stud rams and ewes and lambs, and we've done that all the way through the agricultural shows regionally, and then took them to Perth as well. So I love shows. I just think they're just such a great thing for the community.
I think so too. And I think it's really nice to be able to, read that clear perspective from someone who's been there and done it. Another thing that I love about your books, Fleur, is that whole farming element. You're walking the walk and talking the talk. You know exactly what goes on. Do you mind if I show a few photos from your beautiful property, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, of course.
Excellent. So if we have a look at this one here, my screen tells me that there's some pretty nice views there. Your screen saying the same thing?
Yeah. So the one with the sunset behind the trees, that's some cattle yards that we've got there. That was at the end of a harvest day where there's a heap of dust coming up. It was one of those days where it was a very long day, and I was just the kids had already got home, and I was heading back to the house to cook some tea and get ready for the next day. There's some cattle there that we were just bringing into weigh. They would have been probably going to Woolies or somewhere like that. That thunderstorm, that was a cracker. We'd had sheep in the yards for shearing that day, and we saw it coming. We were sort of hoping it might go around. We had an inch in 20 minutes, and I went down to the yards to let the sheep out in a pair of shorts and a singlet and a pair of rubber boots to let them. No one would have wanted to have turned up. That's where I used to live with the hay. That's where I used to live out east of Esperance. And we always used to make a lot of hay. Obviously, you can see we've got cattle, and we always used to like to make a couple of years worth of hay, so we were as drought-proofed as what we could be.
That's beautiful. And one of the things I also love is the property that you live in at the moment, and the bird song and the beautiful images that you keep throwing up from your life. It's really lovely to see it, and I'm sure that if anyone's watching tonight and they're not following you on Instagram, they're missing out, because there's some beautiful warbling birds in your backyard.
There is, and I've got a kelpie that runs around. He's quite keen on the crops, going through the crops, and there's always a Jack Russell that you'll probably hear bark in a minute when my son gets home from work. And yeah, they're all pretty camera orientated. They know when they're like children. They know when the camera turns up. They pose.
Very photogenic. That's what you need in farm animals when you've got a rural fiction theme in your books. You're also a very proud mum, Fleur. So as well as writing books, this is your 15th book, is that correct?
16th, actually.
16th. Sorry, your 16th book, which is massive, and 600,000 books sold. That is amazing. Does it ever get old?
Oh, do you know what, Maya? I half the time I just never even think about it. It's one of those things that I look at it and go, "Oh wow, 600,000, yeah, cool." Yeah, wow, I'm not sure that's me. But yeah, no, it's amazing. But yeah, I guess I just sort of get on with what I've got to do, and I don't think about it too much. It's if you had asked me 11 years ago when Red Dust had first been published, I would have laughed at you. Or even 12 years ago, before I'd even had a publishing contract, I wouldn't have known that I actually had it in me to write one book, let alone 16 or 17 that we're editing at the moment. Yeah, it's just crazy. Very, very blessed. And I just have to say, also in the right place at the right time, because so much of publishing, as you would know, is about luck. And I was the second one published after Rachel Treasure's Jillaroo had come out. There's a real hunger for that type of book. And yeah, right place, right time.
And Fleur, one of the things that I really loved is when I was thinking I'd like to write a book. How do I go about it? I listened to a million podcasts, and one of my very favourite ones was, I can't remember which podcast it was, but you were talking about how you put your book in on the slush pile. And can you please share that story? Because I just love that story, and it gave me so much hope as a young aspiring writer that, you know, I was just from a country, I didn't have any fancy, you know, degrees in writing, but I had a hankering for telling a story, and your story was one in very particular that resonated with me early on and gave me hope that perhaps, okay, if Alan and Unwin were taking on, you know, this lovely lady called Fleur, whose books I've read and loved, there's hope for me.
Well, thank you, Maya. That's lovely. But yeah, I'm the same. I haven't got any fancy qualifications or, you know, anything. I've got a storytelling family behind me. You know, my nana and my dad are wonderful storytellers, and my cousins and my brother are storytellers in different ways. You know, my cousin actually, Tony Heaslip, she writes books as well. She's written memoirs, but most of us write, you know, poetry or music. And so we come from a long line of storytellers. But this one particular day, Mum and Dad always knew, I think, that I should have been involved in words somehow. So when I left school, they gave me a creative writing course, of which I did like 2 modules out of about 20 or something. And my tutor had said to me that he felt that I was hiding my light under a bushel, and I really, with my children's books, I was writing children's books. So my son is autistic, and I was trying to, children's books here. So I was trying to help with his attention span, and so I'd written them, and then I was given Rachel Treasure's Jillaroo for Christmas, and I thought, oh, I think I'm in a pretty good spot to try and write something like that. So I sat down and I wrote, I don't know, 6 or 8 chapters or something, and then submitted the first chapter into Friday Pitch. And Friday Pitch, for those who don't know, is where you can send your manuscript in on an email to Alan and Unwin, and they will look at it and get back to you in a certain period of time if they are interested in looking at your manuscript further. So Louise Thurtell, who is the founder of Friday Pitch, this hadn't been going that long by the time I submitted my first chapter, and she came back to me, and I still got the email. She said, your writing's really strong and commercial, but it's not what I'm looking for at the moment. I really strongly suggest that you try out the publishers. And I knew nothing about publishing. I didn't know that Alan and Unwin were like Australia's biggest independent publisher, or anything about any of the other publishers. But what I did know was I felt that I had a connection, and I wanted to go there again. Something just kept pushing me to resubmit to Alan and Unwin. So this time, I broke every rule there was to break. So I sent 3 chapters in, and I would say now, if you are submitting, don't ever give a publisher a reason to reject you. So follow the guidelines exactly. But I didn't. 3 chapters, synopsis, asked for feedback and offered to pay for feedback, which, you know, not just, I cringe every time I think about that now. And so what happened was then Louise came back to me and said that she would like to take the chapters to an acquisitions meeting. So she did that, and I put it out of my mind. We were frantically busy on the farm. I think I'd had 10 days straight in the sheep yards because we'd been crutching. And I get home, phone rings, got washing up to my ears, gardens crazily overgrown, everything just, you know, all sort of piled into one. And the phone rings, and this lady on the other end of it says, "Hi, it's Louise." And I'm going, who the hell is Louise? I don't know anyone called Louise. And then she went from Alan and Unwin, and I went, oh, okay. And so then I tried to pretend that I was very professional, which I never am, always got verbal diarrhea. Tried to ask questions that I thought were, good questions to ask, got through the conversation, hung up the phone. Next minute, the email dinged saying all of the outline of the contract. And then down the bottom, Louise had written, you are the most unexcited author I've ever made an offer to. And I thought, oh, do I answer or don't I? I just sent an email off without thinking about it. And I just said, you didn't see me jumping on the bed after I hung up the phone. So that was my call story.
That's fantastic. I love it. I think it's great. One of the other things that, did you see it coming that Detective Dave would have such a cult following? Because he is very well loved and people talk about Detective Dave like he is a real person.
Yes.
Flash up a photo on the screen and share that screen again. Can you tell us about Detective Dave?
Yeah, so that is a Detective Dave. That is not the Detective Dave, but a Detective Dave. That was taken, I was up in Perth, I'd had back surgery a couple of years ago. So Detective Dave as a character is a very flawed character, a bit of a hothead, especially in his younger days. Has an amazing heart, huge amount of compassion, and is always wanting to make sure that the so-called victim is avenged as such, and sometimes that includes him breaking the rules. And I think that that's what makes him so attractive, is that he will break the rules. It won't matter to whether how he's got to follow police protocol. He's more than happy to break the rules to make sure that everyone's safe. And I think that that's probably why people love him so much. I wrote a blog ages ago saying that if Detective Dave Burrows was real, I would have married him years ago. So I've got dibs. Everyone else can come in behind. But I never saw Dave taking off the way that he has. He was my first, in my first book, Red Dust, and he was a great character in that. He appeared again in Purple Roads, and he was supposed to be in Silver Clouds, except the editors edited him out, so he didn't turn up in there, which was really sad. And then when I wrote Emerald Springs, and in the first chapter of that, I've got a carjacking, and I needed a detective, and I thought, I've already got one, so I'll just use him. And then from then on, it just went crazy. And then we went to, then I had a divorce and moved into town, and I was looking to sort of fill time in, and I was working out what we were going to do, and the kids and I so I said to Alan and Unwin, can I write 2 books a year? Which was fine with them, but we sort of thought, well, 2 rural lit books a year might be a bit too much. So then it was, as Dave was really getting his following, so I said to them, well, what about we take him back to write when he first started with the Stock Squad? And we've got this time frame that we can go to catch up. Will give us quite a few books until we catch up with the modern day, and so that's what we've done. So the April book is always the early Dave Burrows. The November book is present day Dave. I think he's still as great in both young and present day. He's a lot more of a hothead in the early days, in the early series.
That's fantastic, because he is a very likable guy, and I love that you've got first dibs on him, of course, and you've created him. That makes complete
sense. Just have to find a real one now.
Now, we touched on your children a little bit earlier, and I will show a proud mum photo, because I think it's really nice that you've got your children cheering you on in the background the whole way through. What do they think of you as an author? Do they see you as the famous Fleur McDonald, or are you still just mum?
Just mum. It's hilarious. Rochelle just gets so annoyed when everyone says, oh, you must be so proud of your mum. And she just goes, no, she's just mum. And I I love that. That's the way that it should be. Yeah, no, I'm a very proud mum. Both of my children have overcome huge challenges to get to where they are now. Rochelle has dyspraxia, which is a breakdown in speech and gross motor skills, and obviously Hayden's got autism. So they are just the most amazing kids, and I'm very proud of them both at how they've got to where they are in life now.
That's fantastic. And do they read your books, or are they, now that you've got 16, it's a little bit old hat for them?
Hayden's read the first few of them. I really liked Red Dust because that involved planes, and he's a pilot. He's just got his pilot's license. Rochelle's not at all interested. She turned up to me the other day though. She was very funny. She said, I don't know whether to talk to you about this or not, Mum, because I hate being compared to you, but I want to write a book. And I hope she does. I think she's a fantastic writer. I think she's probably better than what I am, and I hope she does go about it. So we just, I wasn't quite sure what the boundaries were with that for her to make sure that she was happy to. I wasn't sure what she was happy to show me, but I think we're going to get somewhere with that, which would be fantastic. I always thought she wanted to be a politician early on in life, and to be a political journalist, I think, would have been her aim if she could have been. So yeah, we'll see where it goes.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm sure she's got some great examples set by you with all your hard work, Fleur, and working to deadline and things like that. Do you have a favourite part of the process? Do you like the first draft? Are you really loving sinking your teeth into structural edits? Is it when you go through and do the copy edits and that final little check through, or do you like the promo side of things? I think I know the answer to this, but or I know which ones are not the answers.
Do you? Which ones are not the answers?
Well, I think you were saying that with the promo stuff that that wasn't your favourite, that you'd much rather be kind of buried in the book and in the story than talking about the book and the story. You do both very well.
I actually really love the editing. I really love the editing, and so many people don't. I find it really interesting that they don't. See, I find the story writing actually quite difficult. I always think that it's crap, and I go back and I read things and I just go, oh, this isn't going to go anywhere. So I love it when we get to the edits and, it's had a professional eye cast over it, and it's not as bad as what I think it is. And I must spend a little bit of time writing in my subconscious state, because I know that when you get the first edit back, for those who don't know, the structural edit, they don't actually make any major changes to anything that you've written in there at that point. They just go along the sidelines and in the track changes and make comments about where you could expand on something, or if it's overwritten or something. And I often I'll go through and I'll read something and I think, I don't remember writing that. So I must actually, and it's not as bad as what I think it is. So, it's never, I must spend a lot of time in my subconscious when I actually write, which I guess is not a bad thing, living in your imaginary world, but to be able to do that and then, smash out, 6 or 7 chapters in one hit, that's really helpful, because I do run very close to deadlines. Deadlines make me work very hard.
I definitely think that is a theme that I'm finding as well, because I've got 10 days to get my structural edit back. And today I was working on a brand new form of procrastination, which was fixing the grout in the bathroom. I mean, you can leave that type of stuff right up until about 10 days from deadline, can't you? And then I'll do that. Oh, now I really need to work on the book. What's your favourite form of procrastination?
Oh, I've been known to clean windows. Which is just, not me at all. And normally I just get in the car and go for a drive, go out the farm, or there'll be something really urgent that needs checking out at the farm. Or something urgent downtown, or that I need to have a coffee with a friend or something. That's probably my favourite type of procrastination, unless, of course, the freezer's empty and I need to replenish the cake tin.
Yes, well, that's a very important form of therapy, I think, baking therapy, and it's great for getting those writing cogs turning.
I actually think that there's something really grounding with just that type of thing. I know when I come back from tour or I've been away and I feel like I'm really disconnected with my life, that I getting back into the kitchen and just doing something as boring as mopping the floor makes a really big difference to actually bringing me home.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Now, I do hear that you spent some time writing in a hut. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Fleur?
So, well, the hut, is that the one that you've got? Yeah, that one. So that's actually where I lived for the first 7 years of my married life. There was no power and there was no toilet. And we had the power put on just as Rochelle was born. So she was, so 7 years. That hut was an amazing little piece of equipment. It used to let the snakes in. It used to let the mice in. It used to have mould growing in the windowsills because there was no veranda over the other side of it, and it was all the predominantly southern winds came and hit the windows. I used to have to open the oven door, light the oven, and open the door as a heater. We had a little gas fridge in there, and one particular time I had the computer set up out in the back area, and one particular time I was writing and I had this massive dugite snake come in, and it scared the absolute bejesus out of me. I just heard this rustle, and I turned and I looked around and I just saw its tail flicking off. So Rochelle, I was pregnant with Hayden, and Rochelle was Rochelle would have been in a bassinet. It's only 13 months between them, so Rochelle would have been in a bassinet on the kitchen table. And I did the absolute obvious thing that you would do and rang my mum 2,000 kilometres away. I said, Mum, there's a snake in the house. And Mum said, fantastic. What do you want me to do about that? It took me 2 hours to get the bugger. I finally did, but I got him under the cot in the kids' room. And yeah, that was all a bit scary there for a moment or two. But that hut, that was where we spent the first few years of our married life, and none of that bothered me. None of the hardness or the tough times actually bothered me with any of that, because we both wanted to be farmers and we had a dream that we were working towards. So it was just one of those things that you did as a means to an end.
Absolutely. Well, I think you certainly earned your stripes to have a lovely office now. And you like to write in the mornings, don't you, Fleur? I quite enjoyed your advice about, having the curtains blocking it all out so you're just focusing on the words. Can you tell us about your writing routine?
Yeah, I love writing at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'll get up and write then. I know that one day I was at Allen & Unwin and we were doing a roundtable discussion, and I was saying how much I loved writing that early in the morning, and Tom, who was head of publishing, he just said, what is this 4 a.m. you speak of? But that's when all the mystery is outside. There's no noise in the house, and you don't know what's happening out behind the curtains and in the dark. And I just find it's like a bit of a bewitching hour type thing, and I love it. And I often find that I get a lot more work done then than what I will do during the day. The other place I love to write is sit outside underneath my gum tree, and I'll write out there, and that's really good because it's away from the internet, and I can't have the internet go, it just doesn't reach that far out, so that's always really helpful. There's no distractions there. That's not a procrastination thing. So yeah, I don't actually have any routine for writing, which is going to sound a little bit crazy, but there's so many other things that I do during the day as well. I know that I need to write every day. I sometimes don't, but I write a journal. I do write a journal every day. Oops, I'll just get that. And that's what I love about journaling is I reckon it empties my head. And I don't know if you've heard of Julia Cameron, but The Artist's Way, but that's where I got the idea from. And she says that if you write every morning as soon as you get up, before you sort of really even get out of bed, that it'll empty your head, which will allow the creativity to come in. So what I do is I'll get up and get a coffee and sit on the back veranda and I write, but I also have a list alongside of me, because invariably I will remember jobs that I have to do as I'm writing this. So I've got my list, so I don't have to worry or think about that anymore. And the other thing that it does is if I write myself into a corner, I talk to the book as like I'm talking to a person, and I usually can solve the problem. It sounds really weird, but it works.
That's fantastic. I love it. One of the things that you would have so many different writers coming to you for advice, and I think it's fantastic that you've crystallized some of this fantastic wisdom that you've gathered over the last 16 books and put it into a writing course. Can you tell us a little bit about it's between the pages, isn't it?
Yeah, between the pages. So I'm a great lover of secret societies. You know, I grew up the Secret Seven and all of that type of thing. So we have a secret. So whoever gets involved in the writing course, it gets involved in a secret a page where, you know, I post about things that I'm up to or things that I've got questions I'll answer. But what it is it's a 16-day course where you'll get an email in your inbox every morning, and we'll go through. Sometimes it's writing tips for being published. Other times it's writing tips about, you know, what I want you to write that day. I want you to choose a certain amount of words to write within that time frame. And you don't have to write, and I think you would find this, Maya, you don't have to write, you know, 2,000 words every day. If you write 532, that's okay, because you've still written. But the next day you might write 700, and so if you just keep doing that every day and setting a routine and making sure that you keep to that routine, you will find that you've got a book really, really quickly. I'm just about to start in the next week or two doing manuscript assessments, just for you know, people that might want to have a little bit more of a polished look on their manuscript before they send it in. But again, it's just about giving back to people that, yeah, I didn't have anybody, and a couple of the people I contacted weren't helpful. That's not that they didn't want to be, they just didn't know how to talk about this type of thing. So yeah, I just want to give back and make sure that people who would like to be published have a really good chance of it.
And that's fantastic. So people can find out about that through your website, and they can contact you on Facebook as well, can't they, Fleur, if they're interested in following up and finding out more?
Yeah, absolutely. On the website, you can just go and you can actually put buy it there, and the emails will come through to you straight away.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can't wait to see what comes out of that. There'll be some budding Fleur McDonald authors coming through. That's great. Now, you and I are both very lucky to share a wonderful publisher in Annette Barlow, who heads up the rural fiction section of Allen & Unwin. Do you find that you know, we're so lucky to be supported by such a great team, whether it's the marketing team, the publicity team, the cover designers, our wonderful publisher, copy editors? You know, did you imagine that there would be that support? Because, you know, it's blown me away, the type of, the different things that each of the different parties bring to the table.
Yeah. Do you know, when I first started Maya, it wasn't like that. And the support was always there, absolutely, don't get me wrong there. Support was always there, but it was really unusual for authors to be involved in their marketing or, you know, like that behind the scenes type thing. And it was resisted for a little while. But, you know, when I had my marriage breakup and I went to Allen & Unwin, I said, you know, you need to understand, this is my business. This is how I'm going to support my kids. This is how I'm going to support me and pay my mortgage. So I just really like to be involved. And they went, come in. And I was so grateful. And I think that sort of, that's how it sort of works now, you know, that we are invited in. You know, I get a couple of 2 or 3 girls to choose from for the cover. If I don't like the backdrop of the cover, then I usually say, we've got a new Dave Burrows book coming out in April next year called Something to Hide. And Annette and I have had this hilarious conversation about an arse on the cover, because that's what it is. There is an arse on the cover. And I said to her, do you think we could have one that was just a little better? And then I went through and I found I Googled Wrangler butts and sent them through to her. So, you know, we have a great relationship where we can just go and feel free and comfortable to talk about all of that stuff. Love the marketing girls, Sarah and everybody there. And of course, you know, Laura, who's a publicist. And I just, you know, I have spoken to many other authors, and I've known authors that have left certain publishing houses because they haven't been looked after. And that is not an issue that we have with Allen and Unwin.
No, I think we're in very safe hands.
We are.
Now, I know that you've given readers the opportunity to, is it name a character or to choose a character name in one of your books recently. Now, is that a lot of fun as it seems, or is that fraught with danger?
Oh, no, I think it's a lot of fun. I did put a little bit of a twist on it though, because I wanted people to make a donation to DV Assist, and which is an organisation that I founded a while ago. And, you know, we've got some great entries, and so I know what names I've got. So it was the name of a girl, a boy, and a dog. So you know, I've got this great crazy dog called Cash running around in this book that I'm writing at the moment. It's so cool. And I guess the fraught with danger thing is probably more from the people that actually put in for the competition, because they'll probably be going, oh, well, yes, their mates will be going, why didn't you put me in? And they couldn't be entered.
Oh, that's fantastic. And we'll head to questions. We've got a couple of minutes, then we'll head to questions from the audience. But I just wanted to ask you one more thing. What are you currently reading, and where can people find you?
Well, I've got 3 because I'm never, I guess you're the same, Maya. You've got a book wherever you are. I've got a book alongside the toilet, a book in the car, a book next to my desk, and my couch. So The Good Teacher, which is another Allen and Unwin book. So I'm really enjoying that at the moment. Always really loved Belinda Alexander's books. She's just, like Wild Lavender is one of my favourite of hers, but I'm liking this one as well. And, you know, I've got to do a bit of research as well. So Drugs, Guns and Lies by Keith Banks. Yeah, and that's pretty nail biting.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think you do the, you know, that real tingling tension really well as well. For the last quarter of your book, The Shearer's Wife, I could not put it down for love nor money. So I stayed up late into the night, and I'm normally an early bird because I like to get up early. But I stayed up quite late past my bedtime trying to finish it because I needed to know what happened. So I think you do that really well as well.
That's probably the editor's fault, because I got to the end of the edits in the first round of structural edits, and she said, what about this twist? And I went, oh, okay, that'll work. So anyway, I put it in, and then I was talking to Annette a little bit later on, and I said, so Krista is my editor. I said, did Krista tell you that we added another chapter in where we did this, 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 and this? And Annette said, there's this pause on the end of the phone, and she said, no, I don't think they needed to tell me that. Because it's not really a rural lit book, it's more a Dave Burrows book. So, but it was funny, and I think it's worked well. There's been a few reviews that have come through that I've just gone, wow, what an ending. Yep,
I thought it was fabulous. So everyone needs to pick up a copy of The Shearer's Wife and get onto it. And can you remind us, Fleur, where people can find you just before we go to questions?
Yeah, I'm pretty easy. Facebook under Fleur McDonald, Instagram under Fleur McDonald Author, and same for Twitter. I'm there, and the website is fleurmcdonald.com. .com, fleurmcdonald.com.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a pleasure chatting to you. We'll go to Tracy now, and I think she's got some questions down there from the wonderful audience.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, ladies. There are a couple of questions here tonight. And thanks for showing us those books that you're reading at the moment, Fleur. I have written those down for myself. But just to follow on from that, are there any writers that have most influenced your writing while we're talking about other authors?
Yeah, Michael Connolly is a huge influence on my writing, and Patricia Cornwell's earlier books, you know, like I really love murder mysteries, forensic science. So yeah, any of those types of book I'll just like pick up and read. But that's what I like watching on TV as well. Like I'm an absolute sucker for Midsummer Murders or Vera or, you know, Shetland or anything like that. So I rarely watch anything else. And I guess that's sort of research by osmosis a lot of the time.
Great. And I apologise, Tanya, because I think I've just asked your question for you. Tanya looks like she's a big fan of yours. She's put lots of wonderful comments in here, which I'll read out to you. So she did want to know, what books do you enjoy reading, Fleur? And also she says, congratulations on your 16th book. A wonderful achievement. Please don't stop.
Oh, thank you.
And she also says that you are lovely and natural and nice to finally put a voice and person behind her favourite books that you've written.
Oh, lovely. Thank you. I guess the other books that I do read is, like with the Belinda Alexandra books and that, I do read women's fiction as well. What I don't read is a book that I open the first chapter of and I know what's going to happen in the end. I don't like reading books like that. I will get, and if I get halfway through a book, and this is going to make everybody gasp, but authors do this too. You get halfway through a book and go, I reckon I know who's done it. Turn to the back, read the last chapter, and go, yeah, I know who's done it, and put it down. And if I haven't found it, if I'm not right, I just go, wow, kudos to you, and go back and work out where I was wrong.
I'm guilty of that too. Sorry, checking the last page. Or I get everyone else at work, because we work in the library, so we all read books, to read it for me and tell me what happened. But it's a bit naughty. Kathy Maxted, she's just sent a message through. Yeah, she says, got his pilot's license. Huge congratulations to Hayden. So there we go.
Kathy's just released a book called Australian Women Pilots, I think it is. So Kathy has just got a book out now about pilots. She's a pilot herself.
Wonderful. Excellent. Julie would like to know, do you have a strict writing schedule or is it seasonal?
Seasonal is a really good word for it. Deadline-ish, I'd call it. Because I write 2 books a year, I actually don't have the luxury of a lot of time. I used to not plan my books. I plan them a little bit more now, but with total subject to change, because again, if you're going to read a book, I don't want you going to the last page to work out what I've written. I want you to get there and go, wow, I didn't see that coming. So I tend to write a book within about 6 to 12 weeks. And then obviously it's a really, really big edit. So I don't actually have a writing routine as such. Writing is the main part of my job, but it also fits in around all the other things that I do as well.
Great. So how long did it actually take to write The Shearer's Wife, and what are you working on next?
I think The Shearer's Wife might have been 10 weeks, I think. There was a funny time when I was writing, I think it was it was Without a Doubt. And I was up in Perth talking to my detective friend, and I had about a week to go on my deadline, and I was really struggling with the book. And he just said, I've got this great idea, we're going to do something that Dave's never done before. And I said to him then, 50,000 words I've got. If we do this, I'm going to have to delete. You are going to have to be at my beck and call to read everything. So I deleted 50,000 words and I wrote 50,000 words in a week.
Wow.
That made me very sad. My hands didn't work very well afterwards for a little while.
There's another question here. Maya mentioned how well loved Dave Burrows is. Do you have a plan of when you will retire him as a detective?
Yeah, I do. But I'm not going to tell you. I have got a plan, and I have a replacement in the wings. I just don't know that I'm ready to let him go yet. That's the trouble. Every time I think about that, I get a bit sad, because in the book, Dave is he would be 53. And he's sort of getting to that time where, as a copper, you're probably going to look at retiring. And, he is clashing heads with a lot of the authorities in the last few books. And it's not that he's being brash or breaking rules, but he is certainly pushing the boundaries. And I suspect that he'll probably go out with a fairly big bang.
Maybe he could stick around and be the mentor for the new detective that comes in.
Yeah, well, maybe he could be.
What else we got? If you could have a drink or two with only one of your characters across all of the 16 books, who would it be and why?
Dave?
A nice romantic champagne, perhaps.
Yeah. I would love to have a drink with Dave. I guess all of the characters I create in my book, all the girls, the strong female characters and that, I create as people that I would like to be my friends and that I would like to have a drink with. So, probably any of those girls. But Dave and Jack are great characters as well, and either of those two, happy to have a drink with either of them.
Great. That'll lead into the next one. So when you develop characters, do you already know who they are before you begin writing, or do you let them develop as you go?
Funny, when I edit, I find that most of the editing is done in the early part of the book, because that's when you're getting to know your characters and you're getting to know the storyline. So there's not as many edits in the last probably a third of the book. So I think that they sort of develop over time, and the more time that you spend with them and walk in their shoes and so forth, I'll probably have a bit of an idea. I certainly obviously have an idea about a name and what their role in the book is, but I think you do get to know them over the course of writing the book, more so than when you first being fully developed when they first start, because that goes with change as well. If you change this the storyline a little bit, then perhaps you may have to change their personality just to work in with what you're doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's all the questions, Maya, we have from the listeners tonight. Did you have anything else you wanted to chat to Fleur about before we finish up tonight?
I certainly do. I did have quite a long list, but I thought I'd better not rip anyone off. So I'm quite happy to have you back, Fleur.
Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to know is I did see the photo of you with Michael Connolly, and that would have been an amazing highlight.
Yeah.
How did you go with that?
Oh, I couldn't speak and my hands were shaking. Total fangirl moment. Yeah. And he was lovely and kind, and and the introduction that that we had was incredible. I was supposed to go to Sydney when he came, I think it was 3 or 4 years previously, and my son was really badly burnt, so I didn't get to go. So I was going to hell of high water this time. Yeah, I was very lucky. I was very lucky to be able to go to that. Took my agent and a few of the Alan and Unwin girls turned up on the same table as us. So it was great.
Oh, fantastic. And, that would have to be one of the celebrity-related highlights. But what's been one of the most unusual things that's happened in the course of your work as an author, whether it's in the research or whether it's in the feedback or whether it's, out and about on tour?
Murdering Tips 101 with Fleur McDonald. This has come out in this last tour that I've just done, and we were talking about how I murder people and where I put their bodies and so forth. And that's why I set my books in the Flinders Ranges a lot, because it's great to hide bodies up there somewhere. But I also wrote some books based out of Kalgoorlie, little town called Barrabine. And I was always advised that when you put a body down a mine shaft, you always put a kangaroo over the top of it or a sheep over the top of it, because someone will look down and go, oh yeah, there's an animal down there, there's no body down there, so they won't investigate. Yeah, so there's always those funny things that come out. Funny stories about how people transport drugs that I can use in stories. But when I'm on tour, there will always be one cracker of a comment that you just think, where did that come from? And I've had 2 this last week that I've been gone. One lady asked me whether I always wrote my ideas down. And I said, yeah, you have to, because if you don't, whether it's at 2 o'clock in the morning or at 10 o'clock in the morning, in the evening, you have to write them down, because you will forget. She goes, yeah, I had this fantastic idea about 4 years ago. It took me about 3 years to remember that I had it. Okay, glad you got it back again. So there's that one. Then another lady came up and she goes, "Oh, you're nowhere near as old as what I thought you were." So, you know, there's always some cracker comments there somewhere.
Oh, that's great. And talking about the Flinders Ranges, you do set a few of your stories there. If I just quickly highlight that screen there, can you tell us about a couple of those places? What is it that draws you to this area and to want to write in that spot?
Well, the one in the middle with the purple road with the sheep in the creek, that's where I grew up. That's Mum and Dad's place called Glenroy. And, you know, that's just that's where I belong. I go there as often as I can. I haven't been for nearly a year now, obviously with COVID around, but that's where I go to sit on the banks of the creek and just recharge my batteries and, you know, just, I don't know, I just love it. There's something that connects me to that land. Yeah, so, and it's really hard to describe that. I just love the area. So the one down the bottom with the purple hills in the background, purple ranges, that's again in the Flinders. That's sort of up near Blinman, which is where I set where the river runs. And that was, oh no, it wasn't. It was where I set Indigo Storm. And that was where my character ran away to and lived for a while when she needed to get out of her life and disappear. And, you know, you look at that and you can just see the vastness and the isolation and, you know, all that type of thing. And it's a great place to go and hide. And I've always thought that, you know, if that was something that I needed to do, not hide, but if that was somewhere where I just wanted to go and not be, and just regenerate, that's the sort of place I will go.
That's beautiful. It looks like a lovely part of the world. One of the things that I know readers love, and I love as well, is when I pick up one of your books and I'll see a familiar town name. So my heart was very happy very early on in the piece with The Shearer's Wife when I saw the words Mount Gambier, because it's very close to where I grew up. And then a little bit later I saw Lucindale. It's so great, and it just warms your heart to go, oh, that's my corner of the world. You know, I own that little spot.
Yeah.
How do you choose which towns to kind of dot through your novels? Is that do you have to keep a spreadsheet so you don't keep referring to the same towns, or do you just, you know, draw them out of a hat?
No, a spreadsheet would be far too organised for me. Far too organised. No, I just, so I spent a year or so down in the southeast of South Australia working in a little place called Meningie. So I do know that area a little bit, and I just, you know, I'll just pull names out of wherever I want to go. You know, the towns that I set the actual stories in, so like Barker or Barrabine or whatever, I don't ever use the town's name, but I will use towns around it to sort of give a little bit of placement to where that town is. You know, Barker's obviously very loosely based on where I grew up in Orroroo, and Barrabine is clearly Kalgoorlie if you read the books, but again, you know, it's always fairly loosely based around them, but I do put those other towns in just for probably just to work out, show the reader where the books are actually set. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Another thing I wanted to ask as well, you've got some really strong themes in your books, Fleur, and you know, The Shearer's Wife talks about the impact of drugs through families. We're talking about grief and trauma and how different people process those things. Rural careers as well. I loved the juxtaposition of Jack being the copper and Zara being, you know, the really ambitious young journo. I thought that was great because, you know, you've got that conflict immediately between what he can say and what she wants to know. And, you know, I thought that was really good, as well as the federal police versus the country police station. And how do you go about choosing those different things, or do they just come through as you're writing them naturally?
I think they come through as I'm writing them naturally, although in saying that, you know, the thought process behind The Shearer's Wife was, for the 2020 story, was I'd read an article about a lady from, but not say the state, but yeah, in Australia, that had been selling drugs to put her kids through private school because she just didn't have any other way of doing it. And what I found really interesting was the way that, you know, you do something bad for something good, you know, that illegal Robin Hood type scenario. In all of my books, I will pick something that's topical for rural Australia at the time. You know, the one before the Shearer's wife, which was starting from now. You know, I was talking very much about when we had activists going onto farms that were, you know, seriously causing farmers some angst and making them feel exceptionally unsafe, and you know, those. So I will always pick something topical, but I won't ever bash you over the head with it. But you'll understand the farming and the agricultural point of view from that by the end of the book. Yeah.
I think you do that really well. It's a really nice balance of that, you know, that lovely country lifestyle and some serious issues, and there's, you know, it's this real heart in the stories. So I think that's a really nice balancing act that you've just got down pat. No wonder there's 600,000 copies sold.
Well, thanks, Maya. You're too kind.
Look, I think I will leave you here, and if we can just leave people with one piece of advice out of your many, many, many wonderful bits of advice. You've talked about writing every day. Is there anything else that you'd recommend that aspiring authors, people that maybe would like to write a book one day, besides signing up for your fabulous course, anything else that you could leave them with?
I just think you need to read. You just need to immerse yourself in that whole world of different, and not just books that you feel safe with. You're going to have to push your boundaries a little bit. One of the things by not having any qualifications, but reading as much as what I did when I was a kid, and you know, having my nana tell me stories and had to imagine, you know, those things. I feel that those mini movies that I was able to create from when my nana told me stories, I now see when I'm reading books, and that then that enables me to be able to write better, understand structure of book without even knowing that I understand structure. So I think you just have to read. And, you know, you could read that one maybe.
Definitely, highly recommend. It's out now in all good bookstores, ebook as well as audiobook, Fleur?
Yes, audiobook is coming, not right now, but won't be too far away.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time, Fleur. Thank you, City of Marion Library, for having us, and for everyone for tuning in tonight. It's a real pleasure to be able to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maya. I really have enjoyed spending some time with you, and very much a thank you to the City of Marion Library. Thank you.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Fleur, I must apologise. I missed a question from Kate. Do you have a couple of seconds just to answer her question? She says, does Fleur write the book chapter by chapter consecutively, or does she write the chapters out of order?
Absolutely consecutively. I'm too disorganised in the rest of my life to not be organised when I'm writing.
Great answer. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Fleur and Maya, for joining us this evening and sharing Fleur's new read with us. And congratulations on this, your 16th novel, and for continuing to raise awareness about concerns in rural and remote communities via your work. It's great. And I must say, thank goodness for this amazing technology that we have now that has allowed us tonight to connect with two best-selling, wonderful Australian women authors from opposite sides of the country. It's amazing that we can do this stuff now. Fleur's book can be purchased at Shakespeare's Bookshop, our bookseller partner for this webinar, either online at shakespearesbooks.com.au or in-store at Blackwood. And of course, you can borrow Fleur and Maya's books at our libraries. And please follow the Marion Library's Facebook page, the City of Marion website, and check your inbox to be kept up to date on all of the upcoming Library Through the Lens presentations and workshops. And we hope you will come back and join us again, Fleur, with your next book, and also you too, Maya.
Love to.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.
See you.